Wait. No. Oh, it's covered in weed juice. Still.
Weed juice?
All my pictures have been blurry lately because I think there's still like weed oil.
Wow, man.
Okay, go ahead.
Wear my hat. I want your hats and everything. All right, this is the legend of Johnny Walt with 2 W's. And that was based on the idea that he's the type of man that he could carry more than others could, you know. He always needed, it's like 2 buckets, you know. He could always carry 2. They all wanted to lick the rich upon their sweaty foreheads as they dabbed with their dollars in hopes that they too would get a taste, a chance to suck on the great sagging tit of the bourgeois. This taste was not for Johnny Walt. It was not of his palate. The sun did not shine on his face so that those with the cash could see, but to all the others it did. A spotlight was placed so that the consumer knew who to thank in monetary terms. Johnny Walt worked at the Jimmy Carter Pre-Memorial Arena. He was no peanut man, beer guy, or gigantic foam figure connoisseur. Johnny Walt was not seen, and usually when sighted, completely overlooked. He worked below the bleachers that stood so high. Draped in a uniform of social scorn, cleaning the mess that these people try to ignore that they create. Hot butter dripped from overpriced popcorn scarred his neck, and spilt soda matted his hair. He would continue on, pushing this plastic boulder up a never-ending hill. There was no room for a tip jar in Johnny Walt's territory. Hands too full of garbage and grime, eyes always looking towards the earth, never noticing that others never noticed him. He was always unseen. All the time that he gathered half-eaten dogs, empty ketchup packets, and lipstick-stained styrofoam cups, Johnny Walt was after much more. Discovered so much more beneath the layers of rubbish that rose above the ankles of his knee-high rubber boots. What he gathered also went unnoticed. He gathered the pennies that leaked from the pores between their rich toes, the nickels that seeped from their armpits, and the dimes that dripped from their nose. It was the change he collected. No one was buying him, and he was not stealing from anyone. Every evening, Johnny Walt, below the bleachers, gathered the trash that no one wanted and the coins that no one missed. And every dawn, after work, he would return to his lake. Johnny Walt lived in a predictable town that bordered a moderate-sized glacier lake. A lake whose beaches were fine volcanic ash. Every year in the town, it always rained the same amount, it always snowed the same amount, and you could always predict when to have a wedding, for the sun was always on time. The kind of town you could bet on. This lake was Johnny Walt's refuge, and in it, he filled his hopes, his dreams, and his wishes. Every dawn, Johnny Walt would go to the lake after his shift, with the pockets bulging from the coins he had not overlooked. To him, they were a second chance. Since there were no stones to be found anywhere, Johnny Walt, many years ago, began to come to the lake and skip his findings, for that was where his pleasure lied. His happiness was not rooted in what he could buy with the money. He already had what he needed in life. He found more joy in skipping the coins across the mirror lake than he ever could have in a visit to the mall. The practice went on for many years. Each coin toss was a wish for a starving animal, a prayer for a soul full of hate, but never for himself. And each dawn, Johnny Walt went to the lake and emptied his pockets along with his heart. And each dawn, no one noticed, or if they did not care. Only a few made contact, curious about his behavior as he strolled down the newly lit beaches. Better odds than gambling, was always his answer. After 25 years of cleaning the mess others made, Johnny Walt died at the end of winter, unnoticed in a motel room that was as stale as the breath in his dead lungs. He was buried in a public grave, and no one attended. That spring, a community college environmental class came to do studies on the lake. No one had researched this in a long time because this was a town you could bet on. It was more of a tutorial exercise until the discovery. The lake had risen 1 inch. Anywhere else this would have meant nothing. This town, though, did not have surprises. The big brains were flown in and many studies were done. No extra rain or snow. The theories crept towards illegal dumping. Must be man. Equipment borrowed from a neighboring, much better funded community college was driven in so that a sonar reading could be done because the lake was so deep. Deeper than any human could go. Sonar detected a constant solid surface, and metal detectors proved positive of an illegal dump. It was not until a remote control submarine returned that the real story fell into place. The samples gathered by the sub showed the normal. Bottom silt, a specimen of an endangered lake slug, 3 pennies and a dime. 2 more returns from the sub proved the same. More coins. There was a wave in the scientific community. Many tried to do the math. So if the constant water is X, and the variant coins, sub-pennies, is Y, to increase X by 1/10, Z amount of displacement is needed. Then the Z amount of displacement by Y, the subvariant, calculates a small fortune. Although modest, the brains calculated that roughly $500,000 in change lay at the bottom of the lake. A few who had made contact came forward, and the legend of Johnny Walt grew. One man, through persistence, can achieve anything. Outrage in the community rang out with the realization that this nobody gathered this much money from change in 25 years, and all the time threw it in the lake. What a fool, they would say, for they would never have done that. Why, if I had that money? But they didn't, and they never would. For to retrieve these coins would take just as long as it did to gather them. The lake is a protected landmark, so no machines could be used. And with the presence of an endangered lake slug, the process would have to be as meticulous as an archaeological dig. A person would be lucky to get 2 pockets full of change a day. No one would attempt this, for they only saw dollar signs in their hollow eyes. And this did not give them the strength. They did not see the hopes and wishes and dreams that drove Johnny Walt to come to the lake each dawn and imagine a better place. After the story spread to great proportions, the arena decided to install a catch system under the bleachers, so no more change could be gathered. The janitors' union threatened to strike. Johnny Walt's grave was robbed, and his body was never found. And the change, it still lies at the bottom of the lake, a treasure too great for anyone to carry. It's Johnny Walt.
Oh my god. I can't believe you made me cry.
I'm crying. Dude, I always feel so bad for him. People don't get it.